Hello, let's make a knit squares cardigan. It's basically a cardigan that's put together by individually knit squares. And it's going to be made on two different sizes of needles. This is size 8, and you start off by casting on 25 stitches. And it's really relatively simple. It's going to be made with two different size needles, and to help differentiate which size it is, the larger needles will have this iris bouquet, and I will have smaller needles on a different color. Pretty much everything is garter. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. So this is the size 8 needle, and all the instructions are in the description as usual, and the whole thing is, as I say, garter, and just keep this knitting like this, there, all the way for about 6 inches, and this was a pattern that I found online from Yarnspirations, and the link to that is in the description as well. And I'll also be adding different sizes to it. This one is for the large X large. Then when you reach 6 inches long, cast off. Awesome. You finished one square. Now make 57 more. And these are all going to be sewn together. And I will show you how to do that, and also include a plan, like a screenshot of it. And on smaller needles, we'll be doing a knit to purl to ribbing. And this is on 74 stitches. Knit to, purl to, and repeat the process. And even for with the ribbing, I like to have the these stitch markers. Just help kind of keep track of how many knit to purl tos I've done, especially in the beginning of the first few rows. Then on your odd rows, it's the reverse. Purl to, knit to. Then you'll be doing this for about 2 inches. And you'll be making 2 of these cuffs. They go at the end of the sleeves. And then you'll be doing a bit more ribbing at various other places. And they're pretty much all 2 inches long. And this yarn that I'm using to differentiate for these smaller needles is called Wildflower. And basically, whenever I use the Wildflower yarn, you're on the smaller needles. And there should only be about 2 in size, 1 size difference between your 2 needles. Then we've knitted your 2 inches. You bind off, and I know that when you're doing something like ribbing, or even regular stockinette, you're supposed to bind off in pattern, but I don't like binding off in purl. It's very difficult for me, so I will not. And we'll be making 2 of these and a few other things that will be included here. And we'll also be needing bottom ribbing, which is over 214 stitches. Purl, knit, knit, purl, and we will also be needing a buttonhole band. And that will be over the course of about 110 stitches. And you'll be knitting about 1 inch of the ribbing, making sure that you end on this next row is on the odd numbers. And so you're basically making buttonholes. You start off by knitting 2 and binding off 2 more stitches, 2, purl, pull over, knit, and that in. There we go. There's the 2 stitches, which I will be placing one of these to help kind of keep track. And then just keep going for another 24 stitches. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 20. What? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay. Then repeat the process. And when you've done that, you repeat the process in reverse, casting on what you just casted off. For these two first stitches, remove that. And basically wrap that a little around your thumb, step under, and then over, then do that twice. And then again, repeat the process. Then when you've completed your buttonholes, you continue the ribbing for another inch. And then for the button band, it's basically exactly like the buttonhole row, the buttonhole band, this thing, but no buttons, or no buttonholes, which you will be attaching later. I have to have my hoods at 13 inches long, and with the squares, it's only about 12. So I am making a hood base that's roughly 1 inch. And like, this is not necessary. This is choice. But this one is 110 stitches. And for me, 1 inch is about 9 rows. And you will also be making a hood border to match with the button and buttonhole rows. It's 10 stitches for 2 inches that is knitted to 26 inches. So it's folding over the front of the hood. And as to help keep it kind of neat. And to connect the bottom ribbing with the button and buttonhole rows, you'll need a square that's about 2 by 2 inches. And here I've got 10 inches, or 10 stitches, which I will be knitting to about 20 rows. And this might not necessarily be all that important, but it might be handy if you're built kind of like a pear like I am. And if you're like me and have to have pockets on everything, I've got 27 stitches here. And then you'll knit to around 5.5, 6 inches, depending on how big you want your pocket. And you'll make 2 of these. And I forgot to mention about the squares for the connecting the bottom ribbing with the button and buttonhole bands. You'll need to make 2 of those as well. So I've discovered that my workspace is a little smaller than I expected. So just to give you a bit of a rundown, the sleeves are 9 squares. There's the other one. And the back is 16, 4 rows of 4. And there's the hood, which is basically the top upper half of the back. And then the front side bit of it is basically the side half. Then I will be adding the screenshot of how everything's supposed to be right here. And then we basically just start stitching them together. And I always prefer to do it row by row. And then sew the rows together. And I also just like to use the yarn that's connected to make it, I feel like it's a little bit neater. But, you know, it's totally your choice.
And this is actually supposed to be sewn together in match a stitch, I guess because there are no seams. But by the time I looked up how the match a stitch was done, this was already sewn together.
so after you've got all of your pieces sewn together as they need to be, and I've trimmed off all the extra yarn, it's time to put it all together. And starting off with getting your two front pieces over your back, and then measuring about 7 inches from the edge, the outside here, place a stitch marker and sew it together. And then we're going to attach the hood to the hood base, and then after that the hood base will be attached here to the collar. Then for the sleeves, we measure down here from the shoulder 9 1/4 inches, which is right there, and just a quick mark on both sides, on the front and the back of it. And then take your sleeve and fold it in half, and basically clip that in. Then after that's done, we'll sew up the bottom of it. And before we do that lower seam to make the sleeve a sleeve, we have to attach this cuff. And then the cuff and the sleeve will be sewn together all in one piece, so it'll be quite easy. Then, when this cuff is attached, you start attaching the sewing the sleeve seam there and the side seam. And then we sew on the bottom ribbing. Just make sure it's stretched out real tight, or so that it connects all the way through. Then you attach your buttonhole band as well as the button band. I've already taken care of the buttonholes. And I've got where the buttons are supposed to be marked with these things. Now I'll probably switch those over to safety pins just to make them a little easier to see. And then we attach the ribbon connect squares, and it's good to have them matching, the same orientation for each one. Just stitch the two edges together, like so. I like to seal it with putting it through the same spot a few times. Makes it tighter and a little neater. Now it's time to add your pockets. I have these about 3 inches away from the corner here. Like that's almost 3 inches and that's almost 3 inches. And I've added some extra yarn there because it's, I think, a little short. And okay, so I like to use the same yarn, as much the same yarn as I can, of my loose ends. Just fasten that in a few times. Move that down a little bit, help it stay on, and then sew on as normal. And if you have like an embroidery hoop, especially a larger one, that can make this a bit easier. Then we sew together the top of the hood. Oops. And I forgot that there was no yarn attached to that. So put in the button there, loop it around a few times, going through those same stitches as best as possible. And then So the rest of the way, making sure that when you reach these places with the seam where the their squares come together, try to sew on the opposite sides of that so you don't go in between. I don't think that will hold together that well. Then you attach the border to the front of the hood, making sure to connect it with the ribbing. And with the way I have this set, it's getting connected to the ribbing first on one side. And then, because there's no ribbing on this border, it doesn't take as much. You don't have to stretch it out. I like to make sure the corners are pretty snug there. Go. And attach it to the actual hood. Then, after you've secured and tidied any and all ends, you start sewing on the buttons. And this is the button that I'm using, or the kind of button. It's about 1 inch. And then just sew them onto where my markers are. And when I sew in yarn, I will typically try to get my sewing needle in between, going directly through the strand of yarn itself. That helps keep it kind of stay. Helps stop my knot there. And just remove that. And replace it with your button. And just stitch that sucker on. Just like so. And then just go over that a few times. Then, of course, fasten it. And if you can, sort of to help keep that knot from going through, fasten it the end to that original knot. Trim. Then do that for the rest of your buttons. And here's also a rather handy tip that I learned in 3rd grade for tying the loose ends of the thread. Kind of moisten your finger a little bit. Then wrap the thread around a few times. Then pinch it to roll it off your finger. Then tighten it like that. Then you can use it for the rest. And I realized I forgot to teach you how I tie the ending knot. And basically you slip it underneath the thread that you've already sewn. And pull it through until there's a loop. Then put the needle through the loop. Then pull it tight. Then do that a few times. And then your finished hand sewn knot. And then I will turn this right side out, and then probably end up getting those buttons a little more secure with a dab of hot glue to the back of each one. And basically, here's our finished product. sleeves, hood, other sleeves, body with pockets. There you go.